Hi, my name is Edward Conn. I'm a transpersonal psychotherapist with a training in dual diagnosis and specialist addiction issues. So today I want to talk a little bit about the biology of addictions and why addictions are so difficult to give up. So a book that I read recently, a couple of years ago or so, is Marc Lewis's The Biology of Desire. Why Addiction is Not a Disease. And when I read this book, what I discovered in it was a neurological explanation for why my techniques in psychotherapy with addictions work so well. And I've been practicing my methodology for a lot of years and been developing over my knowledge of addictions over 20 years. And what I'm doing is effectively helping someone unlearn their addictive conditioning and behaviour. So how this can be understood is through understanding how learning happens in the brain and how behaviour is learning and how repeating something that you're doing eventually becomes learned behaviour. So if you think about learning to ride a bicycle, what you're doing in the beginning is you're consciously and deliberately studying that thing, the bicycle, and all the components that are involved within riding a bicycle and repeating them again and again and again, which is practicing, until you no longer have to think about what you're doing and it starts to become automated. Your balance, your movements, your coordination, what you're doing with the various different parts of the bicycle, the handlebars, the pedals, the brakes, all of that stuff becomes part of your body learning. And it becomes a learnt behaviour. And at that point, you have learnt to ride a bicycle and it becomes second nature. You don't need to think about it anymore. You know what you're doing, it's body memory. So what Marc Lewis very succinctly explains is that when you're learning, you're using a part of your brain which is called the prefrontal orbital cortex. And that is the part of your brain which is related to conscious observation and learning and practicing. So it involves concentration, it involves not knowing what you're doing, but in the process of learning, it becomes something which that information and that behaviour starts to move to another part of your brain called the striatum. And the striatum is where learned behaviour is then contained, if you like, or comes from. So by the time you've learned to ride a bicycle, and say it's couple of years down the line, you no longer ever need to think about what it is that you're doing on that bicycle. It comes easily to you, and it's not part of your conscious awareness or your conscious thinking, and it's being driven by your striatum, and it's effectively locked away in a part of your brain that you no longer graciously need to think about anymore. So if you were to try to think about how to not ride a bicycle, you would effectively need to learn how to unlearn how to ride that bicycle. All right. So this is something I say to my clients: how would you unlearn how to ride a bicycle? And of course, it's a conundrum. You don't have a way of understanding that. And the same thing is effectively exactly true also for addiction. The addiction itself is a learned behaviour, which when you were learning to do it in the beginning was a new behaviour at some point in your life. And it's gone through all sorts of permutations and changes, and it's grown in complexity and usage. And the more times that has been done, the more that is moved to the striatum where it becomes automatic. You no longer need to think about it. Your brain just invokes the need to do that thing at key times based on your emotional response, your environment situation, which is linked to your emotions, and your brain cues that up and it becomes part of your automated behaviour. And it therefore feels compulsive because your conscious self no longer has access to that. The orbital prefrontal cortex is no longer involved. The thinking part of your mind is no longer involved. So this means you no longer have conscious access to it, which is basically what then makes it an addiction. You can't get to it. So what I've learned over the years working with my clients and refining my techniques and practicing my techniques on clients with addictions is I have discovered a way of getting into that programming and undoing it. And I invoke the part of the brain that needs to be invoked to begin to make this a conscious process again. And in doing that, it becomes a process of unlearning. So this works in a very powerful way. And I work with any type of addiction. I work with combinations of addictions, and I work with alcohol, cocaine, alcohol and cocaine. I work with clients who've got ketamine addictions, ketamine and cocaine addictions. I sometimes work with clients who are resistant to change. I work with pornography addictions. I work with people who have eating and food compulsions as well as their alcohol and cocaine use. And I systematically apply my methods as well as broader therapeutic tools that are pertinent to that person's wider circumstance. And I apply this in a very specific way, and I apply it in a broad brush way with the wider elements of their life. And I integrate those approaches simultaneously to bringing depth of change neurologically to that person in their decision making, and also awareness and behavioural changes to other parts of their life that need attention. And the reason why I do this is because I am looking for sustainability. And sustainability will only really happen when that person hasn't only just overcome the addiction itself, but they have overcome the resistances and restrictions and lack of fulfillment in other areas of their life. And this is really what I'm setting out to do in my 8 to 10 week program with someone, is resolution of their core addictive issue and a balancing of their life where the issues within that are also dealt with and worked through. And when you do all of this, it becomes very difficult for someone to slip back because things have profoundly changed in a way that generally they can't even really conceive of. And it becomes incredibly powerful. So it's taken me about 20 years to get to this point where I can understand this and do it. And if you want to see examples of this, you can go to my website and click on case studies that specifically look at addiction case studies I've people I've dealt with. And if you'd like to know more about this for yourself or somebody else you know, you're more than welcome to drop me an email. Go to my website, drop me an email through there, and set up an appointment with me, and we can have a consultation where we can get into the nuts and bolts of what you need to talk about, and I can share my insights, share my advice, give you more understanding of what I do and how I approach my methodology and how I do that with yourself or the person that you're inquiring about, and get more information. Information is power. So I hope this video has been helpful. I'll be putting out more in the future, and you're more than welcome to contact me if you so wish. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.